Man, life's so hard, bruh. Like,
Well, what do you do?
What do you do when life hits the fan?
Oh, wow, that's a big one. So first I panic, then I calm down, and then I always think of many different scenarios. Well, what is the worst? What is the best? And based on what I think the outcome would be, then that's when I make my decisions, because ultimately everything has a solution, most things. So I try not to panic too much. My age has told me that a lot of things have solutions.
I just sit back and say, here we go again.
I take a breath, take a step back, and go to a yoga class.
When things get tough, suck it up and get tougher. You got to be a survivor. You got to pull it together and think of the plan.
My mom told me when life hits the fan, you use that expression as if bombs are going off all around you. And the simple answer is you move out of the way.
I think what I like to do is be by myself and take time to reflect a little bit.
I make lemonade.
Eat ice cream.
I get a big old fat Chipotle burrito.
Eventually what ends up happening is I take a nap or go to sleep, and usually when I wake up I'm in a little bit better mindset to deal with it.
Personally, I think I would get advice from my mom or dad and figure it out with them.
I try not to cry and I go to the gym.
I like to just hang out with friends, go on late night drives, eat food a lot, Chick-fil-A. Yeah, those are really good spots. And yeah, I'll just listen to music, relax.
You should try to talk to someone and they can help you understand your feelings, and also maybe just try to have some quiet time with yourself and just think about all the positives that you've been through and not all the negatives.
I either talk to my friends or my parents about it, or I either cry and sleep.
Probably I will sit back, think about it, and then probably talk to friends and family and see what they think.
Trying to calm myself down and watch TV.
I would say that the most important thing is to have a support system already set up, a safe place you can go to, whether that's people, an actual location, but just mainly having somewhere and someone you can go to who can support you through that, give you some guidance, a shoulder to cry on, anything you need just to get you through a rough time, who can help you through it.
I like to journal because I figure that it gets my words down on the paper and then it takes the power out of it.
If you're talking about when things are getting chaotic, you just got to move through it. A lot of the time we can start getting avoidant of our challenges, but when you tackle them head on, you're able to push through them versus having to deal with them later.
What do you do when life hits the fan?
Find a way to vent some frustration and then reevaluate.
Yeah.
That's it.
So for the theme we came up with, one must become the provider when not provided for. And the quote I chose to back that up is, a few days later, Mom tells me to give my face and hands a good wash. We're going to Christian Brothers. I tell her I don't want to go. I want to work. I want to be a man. That's on page 289. So throughout Frank's school years, Frank's being force-fed a whole bunch of radical ideas by his instructors and getting beat on. And Frank is thinking to himself, what would my time be more worthwhile? Sitting in class, learning, or working? And the reason he comes up with working, even though he's still super young, is because his father is constantly drinking away the wages and his family is constantly left in ruin. And so oftentimes when Frank is coming home from school, he sees men coming home to their families, putting huge amounts of food on their tables. And Frank wants to be that man. And eventually, Frank does get a couple jobs writing angry newsletters to people who owe money and also delivering newspapers to shops. And so with his mother being in a dire state, Frank wants to become the man that everyone looks up to. Frank believes he's the only one that can provide for his family. With his mother being in a constant state of depression because of losing her two sons, Frank takes it upon himself to provide for his family when no one else can.
So the quote I chose to back up my group's theme of one must become the provider when not provided for, is a quote from 249, and it reads, "There's a telegram money order for £3 and we're in heaven." The next Saturday, there's no telegram, nor the Saturday after, nor any Saturdays forever. Throughout the novel, Frank's father has shown time over time that he did not really care about the family, and the money they brought home, he would constantly support his drinking habits first rather than putting his family in a secure position, but rather lets them continue and live in poverty. When he moves to England, of course, this belief of his father carries on, and his father actually abandons them for good and never providing any sorts of money ever again. When Frank realized that his father would never become the provider that he has always yearned for, he finally steps up and takes the initiative of becoming the provider and not repeating his father's mistakes by actively searching for jobs and bringing home a stable income for his mother and 3 younger brothers so that they wouldn't have to continue to live in poverty. And because of this, Frank would not disappoint himself, as he is the one actually providing the things that his father could never do.
The quote that I've chosen is located on page 175 and is spoken by Frank. "You never know when you might come home and find mom sitting by the fire chatting with a woman and a child. Strangers. Always a woman and child. Mom finds them wandering the streets, and if they ask, 'Could you spare a few pennies, miss?' her heart breaks. She never has money, so she invites them home for tea and a bit of fried bread. And if it's a bad night, she'll let them sleep by the fire on a pile of rags in the corner. The bread she gives them always means less for us, and if we complain, she says there are always people worse off, and we can surely spare a little from what we have." When life hits the fan, it can be very difficult to be in the situation and know how to handle them. This quote basically highlights the compassion and the thoughtfulness of Frank's mother and how she never hesitated to lend a helping hand out to someone in need. For an example, in this quote, Frank expresses how his mother was so willing to offer the shortage of bread that she securely saved for her own family to someone else in even more need of it. And that just reminds us, even though we might be going through our own hardships and struggles, going out of our way to help other people in need can make a huge difference in someone else's life. Even the small acts of kindness can make a positive impact on both sides.
The question my group and I came up with was, when life hits the fan, what do you do? The quote I chose to back this up was, "I want the job, I want to bring home the shilling, I want to be a man." The person who's speaking in this is Frank. Frank is wanting to, provide for his family. But when Frank gets home from the coal mines, he's talking to his mother, and his mother was trying to reward him with going to the cinema for working. But she soon looks into his eyes and sees that it's starting to get a little bit foggy, which really worries her because earlier on in the story, Frank's eye started to have a big infection and started to get yucky and foggy, and he actually had to get hospitalized. So, of course, his mother was like, "No, please don't go back to working. It's okay. You don't need to do this." But Frank was like, "No, I want to work." He wants to be the man of the house, which is what he says again. "I want the job. I want to bring home the shilling. I want to be the man." Or I want to be a man. So for the theme that my group and I kind of came up with was one must be the provider when not provided for. So we were kind of saying that because Frank does want to be the man, and he's had pretty much of a really messed up life. His siblings have passed away. His father was a drunk. His life was just not the prettiest life. So he was just wanting to be the man. He wanted to be top one of the house. And that's pretty much it. Bye.